A fully grown male bear was found lying motionless on the icy plains of Svalbard. Everyone thought he was dead, but what they discovered beneath his massive chest left the entire team in tears, right there on the frozen ground. Svalbard. The name itself whispers like drifting snow across the far Arctic north. Here, winter isn't just a season, it's the very essence of the land, pulsing steadily like a heartbeat through everything it touches. The cold doesn't just sting your skin, it seeps into the ice, the howling wind slicing through rock faces and into the fragile thread of life that still clings to this place. Against a backdrop of endless white, an orange snowmobile slowly emerges, steady, determined. Riding it are Tom and Erin, two wildlife conservation volunteers from Canada. He's seasoned, accustomed to the brutal cold. She's younger, full of fire and purpose. They're not here for adventure. They've come to watch, to protect what little remains, the last few polar bears still roaming these parts. Erin grips a GPS tracker, eyes locked on the screen. Tiny signals pulse like faint heartbeats. Each green dot marks a bear, rare, precious, but one signal refuses to move. It's been still for 36 hours. No change, no drift. In this environment, that can mean only one thing: something's wrong. Tom speaks softly, his voice hoarse from the wind. If that's an adult, this isn't good. They exchange a look and decide, despite the risk, they have to check it out. Time is slipping away. The area lies near the ice edge, where massive sheets can fracture without warning when the temperature shifts, even by just a few degrees. After nearly an hour of riding through wind-blasted snow and shifting ice, they finally came to a stop. Up ahead, beside a long fracture in the frozen ground, lay a massive, white figure, still and silent. No movement, no growl, no defensive stance, just an eerie, absolute quiet. It might have died yesterday, Erin whispered, though a thread of doubt lingered in her voice. They moved in, slowly, cautiously, keeping a safe distance. It was an adult male polar bear. Its once pristine coat was mottled with wet ice, and its chest rose and fell in shallow, barely there breaths. So faint you could miss it if you blinked. Its eyes were half open, but the look wasn't threatening. There was no aggression, no spark of the predator's instinct to fight or defend. There was only exhaustion. Deep, consuming exhaustion. Tom froze. "It's alive," he said quietly, watching a faint puff of breath swirl into mist. In all his years working with polar bears, he had never seen an adult male so unguarded. They were notorious for their ferocity, especially when wounded. But this one didn't even flinch. Not because it couldn't, Tom sensed, but because it chose not to. Erin reached for the radio, her voice clear and calm despite the urgency. "Requesting immediate assistance. We've found an adult male polar bear near the eastern fracture by Route 7. It's alive but severely weakened. Possible injury." Her tone was steady, but her eyes stayed fixed on the bear, uncertain, searching. She didn't understand what had brought it to this state, and that, more than anything, was what scared her most. After transmitting the coordinates, Tom and Erin began marking the location with reflective fabric and placed a temporary beacon. The sky was shifting, Arctic twilight fading quickly into a dim gray veil of night. The wind picked up, slashing across their faces and whipping the fine snow into swirling ribbons. "We have to head back now if we don't want to get caught in a night storm," Tom said, his voice laced with concern. They didn't have the right to linger, no tranquilizers, no medical equipment, not even enough light. Staying longer was dangerous, for them and for the bear, should it suddenly awaken in fear. As they turned the snowmobile around, Erin glanced back one last time. The bear was still lying there, silent like a block of ice with a soul trapped inside. The next morning, the rescue team set out toward the coordinates Tom and Erin had transmitted the night before. The snow had stopped, but the air was razor-sharp cold. The sky, a dull, heavy gray, mirrored the silent severity of the far north. The team of 4 included a senior ranger, 2 field technicians, and Dr. Linnea Solvik, a veteran wildlife veterinarian of Swedish descent who had spent over 15 years working with Arctic animals. Linnea was no stranger to polar bear rescues, but as she read the preliminary report, something didn't sit right. An adult male bear that didn't react to humans, didn't flee, didn't defend itself, that was far outside the behavioral norms she knew. As the team approached the site, they stopped at a safe distance. The bear was still there, exactly where it had been the night before. A soft dusting of snow had settled on its back like frost on a statue, but its shoulder rose and fell in the faintest of rhythms. Life still flickering, however weak. No new tracks nearby, the ranger reported. No signs of a chase, no blood around the area. That was a good sign. The bear hadn't been attacked. But it deepened the mystery. If it wasn't hunted, what had brought it to this state? Linnea signaled to prepare a mild sedative, just enough to assess injuries without risking the animal's safety. The injection was administered, and they waited 10 minutes. Gradually, the bear's body began to relax. Its breathing slowed, eyes drooping slightly. As they moved in, Linnea got her first clear look at its face. Exhausted, almost despairing, ice and snow clung to the fur around its mouth, stained with faint traces of dried blood. "Check the right foreleg," she instructed, gently placing a gloved hand on its massive shoulder. That's when she heard it. A soft sound. A breath, maybe. Or a snuffle. Linnea leaned closer, then instinctively stepped back. "Stop! Something's moving." Tucked close against the male bear's belly, almost completely hidden beneath its thick fur and the curve of its foreleg, was a tiny shape. A cub. So small it could easily fit in the palm of a grown hand. It stirred at the sound, eyes fluttering half open, not with fear, but with the calm familiarity of being near the larger bear. Everyone froze. A male bear protecting a cub. That wasn't in any field manual. It simply didn't happen. "Wait," Linnea whispered. "I think there's more movement." Gently, she brushed away the crusted snow beneath the bear's other leg. Another cub appeared, even smaller than the first. It didn't cry or flinch, just lay there, frail and motionless, its fur clinging to its thin body like damp moss. Linnea checked its breathing, still there. Faint, but unmistakably alive. She looked up at her team, her eyes wide with disbelief. They're both alive. One of them might not even be 3 months old. In the hush that followed, the cold was forgotten. For a long moment, the team stood suspended in the silence, gripped not by frostbite or fatigue, but by a question that now burned in all their minds. How could a male polar bear, an animal known for abandoning, even attacking cubs, be lying here, shielding these 2 tiny lives? Once the male bear was fully sedated, the team continued their examination. The right foreleg was broken, a clear fracture, and an old one at that, long past any chance of natural healing. Deep gashes marked his shoulder and flank, likely from a heavy fall or impact with something solid. His body was dehydrated and severely depleted, almost no fat left beneath the skin. Linnea turned her attention to the surrounding snow. No signs of thrashing, she noted. No blood trail leading here. That means he chose to lie down. She knelt near the base of the bear's body and gently lifted a layer of compacted snow. What they saw next gave them pause. The snow around the cubs was drier, more compact, shielded from the direct wind for hours, maybe even days. The male had used his body as a living wall, shielding the cubs from snow, wind, and plunging temperatures. It defied everything they knew about male polar bears. In the wild, it's the mothers who dig dens, who shelter and nurse their young through the long Arctic winter. Males typically leave after mating, showing no further involvement, let alone protectiveness. "This wasn't an accident," Linnea said, her voice steady but tight with emotion. "He meant to lie like this. He knew what he was doing." They transported all 3 bears to the nearest Arctic Wildlife Rescue Center, some 60 kilometers away, a facility equipped to treat injured polar animals. The ride back was silent. The cubs, swaddled in thermal blankets, lay curled beside each other, occasionally nuzzling close in search of the familiar warmth they had known. As for the male bear, he lay on a reinforced stretcher, breathing faintly, but still holding on. Once the 3 bears were stabilized at the rescue center, a wildlife biologist named Lucas was brought in from Tromsø to assist with identification and behavioral analysis. Lucas had spent nearly a decade tracking polar bears across Svalbard, tagging individuals with GPS and managing the region's network of camera traps and migration data. In the tech room, Lucas watched intently as footage from the remote cameras rolled by in time-stamped order. Each clip was another link in the vast chain of Arctic observation. After nearly 30 minutes of scanning, one video caught his attention. Under dim light and swirling snow, a large male polar bear trudged along the ice edge, its gait heavy but purposeful. Lucas paused the frame. He zoomed in, cross-referencing the image with last year's GPS-tagged bear database. After a few keystrokes, he confirmed, "That's Bjorn." The name wasn't a scientific designation. It was a nickname researchers had given to male number 2461, a uniquely gentle polar bear known for his unusual behavior. For 3 consecutive seasons, Bjorn had been observed traveling alongside a single female, a rare pattern. Male polar bears are not known for forming lasting bonds, but Bjorn had stayed close, never straying far from their shared range. Lucas quietly pulled up winter data from the previous season. The female, according to records, had died in a snowslide, either while pregnant or shortly after giving birth. The last camera footage of her had been captured near a natural den in western Edgeoya. After she disappeared, Lucas said, his voice low, Bjorn headed east, traveled almost 100 kilometers over 4 days, not toward food, not back to his hunting grounds. He displayed Bjorn's path on the main screen, a long, jagged route, but the direction was clear. He wasn't wandering, he was searching. Silence filled the room. No one rushed to speculate, but the data, the footage, the protective behavior toward the cubs, all pointed to one inescapable truth. Bjorn had gone searching for his mate's young, and when he found them, instead of returning to the feeding grounds to survive, he stayed. He stayed and used his body as a barrier, quietly, patiently, until he could no longer stand. The recovery wing of the rescue center was always quiet in the mornings. the gentle rhythm of the ventilator, the soft hum of the heating system. It created a calm, steady warmth. On a thick pad lined with specialized insulation, Bjorn lay motionless, his massive frame taking up nearly the entire enclosure. His head rested on a soft folded towel. The fur around his neck and chest had been carefully cleaned of snow and ice. His wounds had been disinfected, now wrapped in sterile gray-brown gauze. A technician stood behind the observation glass, monitoring the vital signs. When he noticed Bjorn's eyelids twitch, he immediately alerted the team. "The male's waking up." Linnea was the first to enter the monitoring area. She said nothing. No one did. Because in that moment, even with his vision still clouded and heavy with sedation, Bjorn slowly turned his head and looked directly at the far wall of glass. On the other side, in a smaller enclosure filled with artificial straw bedding, the two cubs lay curled together, sleeping, or more accurately, clinging to each other for warmth that was no longer beside them. Bjorn drew a deep breath. His eyes nearly closed again, then opened, never leaving that spot across the glass. "He knows," Linnea whispered, barely audible. "He's looking for them." Everyone on the team knew the protocol. No direct contact between bears during treatment. The risks of infection, of stress, especially with an unstable adult male, were too high. But the next day, something unexpected happened. When a staff member brought in liquid food for the cubs, they didn't eat right away as usual. Instead, the older one, its coat already growing glossier after days of care, walked to the glass wall. It stood on its hind legs, placed a front paw gently against the clear surface, not forceful, just deliberate. On the other side, Bjorn lay still, eyes half open. When he saw the motion, his massive paw flexed, just slightly. Then slowly, it relaxed again. His breathing shifted, just a bit, like something deep inside his hollow chest was trying to surface. Every motion was recorded. The staff made no assumptions, but everyone watching felt it. This was more than instinct. It was a connection. That afternoon, an emergency meeting was called. Biological data, safety protocols, behavioral patterns, hypothetical risks, everything was laid on the table. Linnea, though the lead expert, maintained a neutral tone when presenting her proposal. "I'm not asking for an emotional decision," she said firmly. "I'm asking for a monitored moment, just one. Allow the cubs to approach the adult under strict supervision." After an hour of discussion, the team agreed. If Bjorn's vitals remained stable through the night, they would allow a final meeting at dawn. The meeting took place mid-morning, inside a wide recovery enclosure designed to mimic a semi-wild habitat, with artificial snow underfoot and insulated ground lining. Bjorn was brought in first, no additional sedatives, but under close watch. He didn't thrash or resist. He simply lay still, his eyes scanning the space before settling into his usual spot, by the glass wall. When the small access door on the opposite side opened, the cubs hesitated. The older one sniffed the air, then stepped out. The younger followed slowly, still unsteady. They stopped when they saw him, the large, familiar figure. For a moment, they seemed to assess, to recognize. And then they ran. No noise, no hesitation, as if the only truth they had ever known was this. They belonged beside that warmth. Bjorn lifted his head, struggling. One foreleg remained motionless, but the other he raised, slowly, gently, as though terrified of doing harm. When the cubs pressed against his chest, he didn't growl. He didn't shift or clutch. He simply curled that one good arm over them, lightly, carefully. They lay there like that, 3 bodies touching, breathing together. Silent. No one in the rescue team spoke. Cameras recorded. Linnea stood behind the glass, her hand clutching her sleeve. Not from cold. Time didn't seem to pass quickly. It didn't need to. The moment stretched, suspended, as if the snow-bound world outside had paused in quiet reverence. When the staff finally moved to end the encounter, they stepped in slowly. The cubs still nestled against the massive, familiar body, nuzzling into the chest where warmth had once lived. Bjorn's uninjured paws still rested across their backs, not tight, but gently enough to shelter them like a living snow cave. No one knew the exact moment it happened. Bjorn didn't gasp. He didn't tremble. There was no dramatic final breath. Just one last exhale, long, soft, dissolving into the warm air of the recovery room, and then stillness. Not rigid, not broken, just at peace. No one remembered when his eyes had closed, but his paw never moved, as if his final thought had never left the cubs, as if he'd only fallen asleep so they could rest beside him a little longer. Outside, the snow began to fall. Through the glass, the tiny flakes drifted down like they were covering a final scene. Not tragic, not grand, but tender, as if something had been gently, perfectly completed. Three days later, Bjorn's body was returned to the ice edge, the same spot Tom and Erin had first marked. There was no ceremony, no crowd gathered for a final farewell. Just the rescue team, a large ice shelf, and a sprig of dried seaweed gently placed on the snow. Linnea was the last to remain. She didn't bring a headstone. She didn't plant a wooden marker. She simply stood there in the wind, staring quietly northward. In her hand was the final behavior log, Bjorn's last recorded actions. At the bottom, she had written a single, simple line. There is nothing wrong with calling this love. Time moved slowly at the conservation center, naturally, rhythmically, like the steady arc of polar sunlight. After their final moment with Bjorn, the two cubs were transferred to a special care unit designed for orphaned or unusually vulnerable animals. Their new enclosure wasn't large, but it was warm, safe, and built with everything they needed: space to move, shelter from the cold, and a snow-simulated area that still felt, somehow, like home. Raising the cubs wasn't easy, but both adapted quickly to formula milk and structured care. The older one, already stronger when first found, was agile, curious, constantly in motion. The younger, though fragile at first, gradually regained strength, walking more steadily with each passing day. Each day, staff delivered food, recorded behavior, cleaned the enclosure, and conducted regular biological checks. But what caught their attention wasn't in the numbers. It was a quiet ritual that repeated with the rhythm of the sun. Every sunset, whether playing, eating, or fast asleep, the cubs would make their way to the northwest corner of the enclosure, where the last light of day filtered through the glass in a pale gray-gold glow. They never cried, never clawed. They just sat there. Sometimes they lay down. Other times, they leaned quietly against the wall, staring out into a yard of artificial snow. At first, the staff thought it was random, but after 2 weeks, the pattern was undeniable. A young team member, Axel, decided to do something small. During his break, he walked out into the yard, found a flat stone that fit in his palm, and gently placed it in that very corner. Not for science, not for observation, just because it felt like something should be there. That evening, the cubs came as usual. They noticed the stone, didn't play with it, didn't touch it, just approached, sniffed, and then sat beside it. They didn't leave right away. Only when the light had fully disappeared did they return to their straw nest. Axel never mentioned it to anyone, but from that day on, the stone remained. No one removed it. No one shifted its place. The cubs still came. They never touched it, only sat beside it. The team began to call it the Western Corner, half joking, half reverent. It wasn't for measurements. It had no biological function, but it became the one place the cubs always chose for silence. Spring came slowly, but surely. Snow melted in the lower valleys. The sun lingered longer in the sky. When both cubs were old enough, strong enough, and had passed all behavioral assessments, the conservation team decided to move them to a semi-wild rehabilitation island, a remote place of snow-covered ridges, diverse terrain, and no human presence. It was where orphaned cubs would learn to live without people, hunt, roam, and grow strong enough for the wild. The transport day was set. No tranquilizers were used, just familiar scents to guide each cub through the passage. The older cub went first, hesitant, then stepping into the straw-lined crate. The younger followed, slower, but seemingly aware. Before they closed the door, Axel, who had placed the stone, approached one last time. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, as if to make sure everything was as it should be. As the vehicle prepared to move, something small happened. The older cub, closest to the door, turned its head. It didn't cry, didn't resist. It simply looked back. Deep black eyes stared through the thick window, toward the old enclosure, toward the place that had once been home, and the small, cold stone that had never been moved. It didn't look back again, just once. Then the truck rolled forward, across a light dusting of snow, heading north, where the wind blows stronger and the sky stretches wide and endless. No one at the center spoke much about the story after that. There were new tasks, new arrivals, fresh snow to clear. But the Western Corner remained. The stone was still there, untouched. Through summer and into the next winter, it was slowly buried again, only to reappear as the wind swept the yard. No one ever moved it. This story stands as a quiet testament to the truth that even in the wild, where survival and instinct seem to rule, there are still moments of profound emotion. Moments where a creature chooses to give warmth, to protect life, not for reward or recognition, but simply because it mattered. In the end, this story is a reminder of our responsibility as humans to safeguard the natural world. Small, compassionate acts, like those of Tom, Erin, or Linnea, can make all the difference. They nurture a fragile but enduring connection between people and nature. And so, as the sun sets over the snowy plains of Svalbard, one small corner remains, a Western Corner where love, sacrifice, and quiet hope continue to exist.